The remarkable Lilleshall Abbey illustrates one of the many reasons Henry VIII and Thomas Cromwell were so keen to dissolve the monasteries back in the 1530s. Lilleshall Abbey had been founded around 1148, built for one of the big religious trends of the time for creating communities of Augustinian canons, or Black Friars as they were known. They were a religious order in the Roman Catholic Church, a church which took a European approach many centuries before civil society created the European community, and were one of hundreds of groups of Black Friars across the continent. At the start at least, they followed the rule of St. Augustine with its call for poverty, celibacy, obedience and a strict monastic life. And for the first 100 years or so, Lilleshall enjoyed a respectable income from gifts and legacies, farmland, a couple of watermills and investments in property, as well as tolls for the use of the Atcham Bridge over the River Severn. It was a calling place for kings, and Henry III dropped by twice in 1240. But it all turned a bit sour a century or so later, with the abbot accused of mismanagement and the abbey finances undermined by the apparently reckless selling of pensions to lay people. The abbey struggled on until the 16th century, and although it wasn't a major religious house, Lilleshall Abbey narrowly escaped the dissolution of the lesser monasteries in 1536. Interestingly, Lilleshall then went into voluntary dissolution in 1538, suggesting the canons may have chosen to dissolve the abbey themselves to avoid the harsher consequences of forced dissolution. The abbey was sold off by the Crown and converted into a private residence by Wolverhampton man James Leveson, and his family lived in the house on the site until they backed the Royalists in the Civil War. They fortified Lilleshall for the king, only to have it severely damaged during a siege by victorious parliamentarians. As a result, Lilleshall was abandoned and left for decay for the next 4 centuries, until the remains were finally placed in state care in around 1950. And perhaps it was because nobody was interested enough to build on this rural site that today much of the church survives. There's also a lavishly sculpted processional door and other cloister buildings. And despite the damage it suffered over the centuries, the extensive sandstone remains still give an impression of its past magnificence, particularly when you consider that the buildings now standing were just a core of the abbey itself. They may have taken vows of poverty, chastity and obedience, but those old Black Friars had nearly 4 centuries of a sheltered life far removed from the poverty of ordinary people in medieval Britain and indeed Europe. The massive wealth of religious institutions like Lilleshall may have provoked Thomas Cromwell and Henry his king to stage a land grab on an unprecedented scale. But it is significant that the ordinary people didn't rise up in protest. The Church of Rome was no protector of the people and never championed their cause. At Lilleshall and other abbeys and monasteries across the country, they paid the price.